Hello again, Jessica with From Dream to Seed. It is a super hot day and I am sweaty and a mess. I've been working in the garden, but I thought I would take advantage of the cloudy skies today and give you a quick tour of my 11 raised beds. So here is raised bed number 1. This was my radish and turnip bed. I have one variety of radish still left. I believe it's China Rose. But I have turnips still growing in the back, and then in the very, very back corner, I have my pickling cucumbers just starting to come up. And I have a trellis that I will put in between these beds once the peas come out, that the cucumbers can vine up. The second bed is my brassica and pea bed. I have peas just starting to flower. I have sugar snap peas and several varieties of shelling peas. And then I have a few broccoli plants that are starting to fruit just barely. And then I have 5 or 6, I believe, five Brussels sprout plants. And you can just barely see the Brussels sprouts starting to form. I need to come and prune some of these lower leaves, but there's some Brussels sprouts. This is my potato bed. I have 3 different varieties of potatoes that I'm growing this year. And you'll see these hoops throughout my garden, and I use them to hold up the the frost and the summer fabric that I use to cover my bed. So I cover my beds in the summer to keep pests from chewing on the leaves. And one of the issues I have in my potato beds are Japanese beetles. So I will put a cover over these in just a couple weeks as those Japanese beetles start to emerge. But this is the potato bed, and you can see I have soaker hose running throughout my garden, and I will probably do a separate video if you're interested in learning how to set up a soaker hose system in your garden. Just let me know in the comments, but so far, so good. And you can see here how I connect my bed. So I use the snip and drip system from Gardener Supply, and you can connect 2 or even more beds if you want. I just connected them 2 at a time to keep the pressure up, but this is really nice so I can water 2 beds at a time. But here I have some Tuscan cabbage, and I had parsnips planted here and they just never came up for me. Parsnips are one of my goal crops that I really would like to grow in here. I think honestly that my seed was just too old. So I'm gonna get some fresh seed and try again next year, but I'm gonna be planting some bush green beans in this bed. And here on my green beds, I have some mustard greens, lots of different kinds of lettuce. And this bed is actually underneath my peach tree, and it's pretty shaded in the summer, and it actually works out pretty well because the shade will extend the season for this lettuce just a little bit, so it'll give me maybe an extra week or 2 before it bolts. But unfortunately I can't grow much in this bed over the summer because it's so shaded. And here I have some spinach, kale, and a little bit more lettuce. And I like to tuck in marigolds wherever I can. They're a little bit of a pest repellent. I wouldn't say they completely keep them away, but I've had pretty good luck with them so far. And I think they just look pretty, and they stay small enough that I can easily grow them in my beds. And so once all this comes out in just a couple weeks, I will probably be planting green beans in this one as well. And then back here, I have my flower bed. So I have some cherry caramel phlox that's coming up. I have some lavender, more marigolds, and I have a tithonia in the very back. So here is my zucchini bed, and I have 3 bush varieties planted, which is why I can get so many in a small bed. And you'll see these little cups around my garden. They're made from just old 2 liters. And I have an issue with roly-polies, you might call them pill bugs or sow bugs, getting in my garden and eating seedlings. If you have also an issue with cutworms in your garden, then these are really great to use. They also provide a little bit of wind protection for the young seedlings. So I keep these on until they're a little bit more established, but this is 3 varieties of a bush determinate zucchini. Here is my onion and garlic bed, and I grew this onion from seed this year. I have about 5 different varieties, from storage onions down to spring onions. They look a little beat up right now. I actually had to lay the soaker hose after I planted the onions, which I don't recommend doing. So they're a little bit wonky right now, but they'll straighten back up. And then down here I have garlic, which I planted last October, so it will be ready to come out probably end of June, early July. So it's doing really well, getting pretty big. And if you've never seen a garlic scape before, this is actually kind of interesting. So hardneck varieties will send out these scapes about the time they start really putting energy into the bulb, and you always want to actually prune off these scapes because the plant will put energy into the scape rather than putting it down into the bulb. So I've pruned off a few. I have to go back and prune some more, but these are actually edible. They taste a little bit like garlicky green onions. They're a little bit tougher, so I like to cook them, but they're really good. Here I have my carrot and tomato bed, and I love to interplant carrots and tomatoes. Their watering needs, their nutrient needs, and their growing seasons actually really complement one another. So I plant these carrots in early spring, and they will get pretty established for several weeks before I plant the tomatoes. So these carrots will be ready to harvest probably in another few weeks, but by the time the tomatoes really start to get large, where they would shade out the carrots are ready to come out. And then my tomatoes, I usually grow indeterminate varieties, which means they're going to get really big. So I single stake my tomatoes and I prune them, and I grow them up these large stakes, so they will go straight up. And then in the fall, when the tomatoes are large and they're shading the soil, I can plant carrots again, and I'll have better germination when it's warm outside with those big tomatoes shading the soil. So they're really, really great to grow together. And like I said, they both like deep and frequent waterings, and they both like a lot of phosphorus and potassium. And last but not least, I have 4 cabbage plants growing, and a little earthworm buddy making his way around. Always a welcome sight in the garden. So I have 4 cabbage plants. They got a little bit of frost damage early on, but they're doing well now. So that is my spring garden. So thanks for joining me today on my raised bed garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and tell me in the comments below if you have your summer garden planted and what you're growing or what you want to learn more about growing. I'd love to hear it. If you want to see what I have growing in containers, you can check out my previous video, Container 101, that shows you all the different plants that I like to grow in containers. So thanks so much for joining me today, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.